Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dawn Tura. I'm President and CEO of Sourcing Industry Group, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to our special COVID-19. Really, this is a public service announcement. And I know that everybody is very, very busy and everyone has a lot of their own concerns, but I wanted to just preface why we invited this amazing group of companies and organizations together today. So all of you, we all know that that our companies are facing challenges, and procurement departments in particular are facing a lot of issues with the COVID-19. You've got disrupted supply chains. We know you're getting tightened budgets, as well as dwindling resources. But we also know that communities themselves, we are all aware that communities are facing food access shortages that have been disrupted, for families that don't have kids going to school for free meals. They are trying to do at-home learning with a lot of parents that lack in these type of resources. And then health supplies and services are at capacity, and we all know that. So as we're facing the worst downturn probably in most of our lifetimes in the economy, many people are also going to lose their jobs. So this is really important that we take the power of our spend and we find a way to readdress it and add it back into giving back to other organizations. So we have a very unique opportunity for procurement teams to drive tangible, measurable change on behalf of your organizations. And this isn't going to cost you a dime. And that's the thing that I'm going to say again and again and again. We can do good for the world, and it won't cost you a dime. So while we are all asking, our companies are asking us, we're asking our local legislation and our commissioners and everyone else, everybody wants to help. This is a time where we can do good with our spend. We can help in our investor relations and in our CSR reporting and sustainability efforts. So while we're looking at the pandemic, we're also trying to adhere to smaller budgets. And so I am so excited to tell you that, and I'm going to say it again, it won't cost you a dime to participate in this program. So why are we all here together? Well, we joined with Boston Consulting Group and Givewith to form the COVID-19 Response Initiative. And through Givewith and their amazing partners, we're bringing 3 nonprofits here today with you to talk about their missions and how we can support just these 3 out of all of the hundreds that are a part of the Givewith network. And I know a lot of you heard me talk about Givewith. I probably waxed poetic from center stage at our last event. But when I met their leadership team, I was so inspired on their want to give back. And they work with both corporate organizations, their procurement teams, and nonprofits, and they help embed social impact directly into everyday business transactions. So this is a PSA to the SIG community. SIG folks, you know that you represent $17 trillion of U.S. equivalent spend. So if we could take a fraction of that $17 trillion and partner with Givewith to be able to return some to nonprofits, think of the impact we could have. So that's why we brought together this PSA today, a chance for us to start adding and leveraging our spend immediately. So joining me today on this very important and timely discussion, I'm so pleased to have my co-moderator, Teresa Schieber, and she's the CSO for Givewith. And then also with us is Roger Primo, Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Kyle Zimmer in the upper left. She is President, CEO, and co-founder of First Book. You'll hear more about the nonprofit in a minute. Also with us today is Leslie Irish Underwood, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for United Way of New York City, and Martha Rebor. She's the Director at Shot at Life, part of the UN Foundation. So first I'm going to ask Teresa maybe to explain a little bit more about what Givewith does, and then we can get into the mission of the nonprofit. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Dawn. We're really grateful to be here. This is such a critical conversation that we need to be having. And all of us, Givewith, BCG, and our nonprofit partners are proud to be able to talk about the incredible response that we're mobilizing. So you wanted me to talk a little bit about Givewith. Givewith is a social impact technology company, and we enable businesses to integrate social impact opportunities directly into their B2B transactions to generate new funds for nonprofit organizations, but also to create additional value for both the buyer and seller in that deal, and ultimately to help drive greater sales, profits, and stock price for those organizations. Givewith was founded by Paul Polizotto. Paul Polizotto is a social entrepreneur and has spent his career developing businesses that both do well and do good, always with an eye towards generating support to address really pressing social problems and challenges in the world. Paul believes, and we believe at Givewith, that companies have an opportunity to change and uplift society in ways that private philanthropy and government support simply can't do alone. Paul sort of envisions a new paradigm, social impact economics, if you will, that both deliver growth for businesses and sustainable funding streams for nonprofits. And so Givewith brings that vision to life. So how does it work? We are built on a robust technology platform with lots of data and analytics. The companies that we work with, we analyze them to get a sense of their ESG, social responsibility, sustainability, performance, recommend really high impact nonprofit programs from among the hundreds of organizations in our network and the thousands of programs we have on our platform that are both delivering high impact social change in the community, but also are very relevant to those companies. Businesses can then embed those programs into their deals, fund a portion of that program through their transaction. Givewith provides the dollars to the nonprofits. Our nonprofit organizations get to work in their communities, and then we're able to provide businesses with tremendous value beyond just the social impact, which is really critical, but we provide reporting, content, media, other kinds of assets and tools that enable both the buyer and the seller in that transaction to communicate the power of that social impact to rating agencies, to key stakeholders like employees, shareholders, investors, and others. What's exciting about this model is that it's a totally new stream of funding outside of philanthropy that enables companies to do even more to drive social impact and to drive and accomplish their business objectives. And while it is incredibly relevant right now as we are confronting the COVID-19 crisis, this is a model that can be put into practice at any time with business deals happening now and into the future. It's really about a new mindset on how companies can integrate social impact into their operations. I'd love to invite Roger to talk a little bit about the collaboration that Givewith has had with Boston Consulting Group, the work that they've done with us to refine our model, and a little bit more on the value proposition. Roger, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Teresa, and thanks, everybody. So we've been working at Boston Consulting Group. Many of you may know us, but we've been working with Givewith over the past 2 years, and it's been quite a journey. We brought together this combination of our social impact team, our sourcing and procurement team, and I represent our software and technology teams to help create this social impact tech business that serves procurement. And I think a few things that were foundational in that. BCG has done a lot of research over the past several years that has demonstrated the linkage between companies that do good and they do well in the market. So we call it total societal impact, but we've been able to demonstrate that companies that create social impact actually perform better in the market. And that was the foundational insight. It's very similar to what Givewith powers. As we went through the work, we worked on the value proposition with end customers. We spent time with over 500 procurement professionals, maybe met some of you on the phone, to understand what they valued. And what we actually found was that when you pair a transaction with social impact, it's valued higher by organizations. So this became a differentiator. Differentiator from transactions. We could show from a seller's perspective, it made what they were selling more valuable. From a procurement perspective, it doesn't incrementally increase your spend. It's bundled by the seller. So it created value for procurement beyond just the traditional metrics that you may drive, but also in kind of the societal impact that you can message back to your stakeholders. And we also spent time with, as you can see, C-suite executives to understand, their perspective on this. And they found that, adding this with a procurement process created more, it elevated the perspective on what procurement provided into that executive suite. The last thing I'd say on it is simply that we believe that Teresa talked about this notion of social impact economics, but we think that this is a fundamental unlock. If you think of traditional corporate philanthropy, it is after you take out costs and expense and salaries and taxes, et cetera, what small percentage is left that is given to social impact. And that is, that has been powerful and good, but that has been the pool of capital that has been available to fund social impact. If we take this where it's tied to the transaction, it's tied to the revenue line, it's tied to the spend line, it's an orders of magnitude larger pool of capital to help support this. And it improves the business performance of both the procurement side and the selling side. So it is truly a triple win in which both the buyer, the seller, and the social impact that is done is a win. And we've been able to demonstrate that with surveys with yourself, empirical analysis of value creation. So as you contemplate this, recognize that this is not just doing good, it is helping the organizations that you work for create, improve their business performance as well. And then I'd also just say in this COVID-19 era that, many of us that are, part of organizations that are continuing to do business, and the headwinds that this creates. I mean, for our organization, we'll talk more about what BCG is doing in this era with Givewith. But, for those of us that are fortunate enough to work and kind of continue to conduct operations in the midst of this economic climate, we think it's our obligation to give back to kind of support those that this tremendous challenge is slowing down. So we really do think it's part of our duty to give back as some of the businesses that continue to run in this very difficult time. I'll pass it on from there.
So thank you, Roger and Teresa. I want to thank you both. And I just want to tell you folks, so as some of you know, I'm a recovering CPA, so I love to get into the numbers. And I spent a significant amount of time going through the BCG analysis, and I was highly skeptical. And I just want to thank Roger and your team because you did an amazing analytical study that truly proves the value that you're giving back to this initiative. So one of the most exciting features of Givewith, though, is your network of nonprofit and social enterprise organizations that are delivering impact. And so while we have 3 that we're going to showcase today, they work with hundreds. So as you're listening, if there is a group in your own location, someone that you're passionate about, something that you want to make sure that you're able to include in your social impact, you can reach out to Givewith and they can see about bringing them into their network. So this is not limited to only the 3, but they did choose 3 amazing partners to showcase today. So Teresa, can you tell us a little bit more about your nonprofit network?
I would be happy to. I love talking about our nonprofits, Dawn. And we've got 3 really terrific organizations with us today. But Givewith works with some of the most impactful, high quality, powerful nonprofit social enterprises and NGOs around the world. The organizations that are in our network, their programs are addressing all of the UN SDGs. They are programs that are validated by research. We do a lot of work to ensure that there is clear impact and that the dollars that get invested in those programs are really efficient and deliver the greatest amount of good both to the communities and the way that the organizations invest those dollars. We have an exclusive network, and as you said, it's north of 125 organizations now that are both domestic U.S. and global organizations. They are focused on a whole range of issues, everything from economic empowerment and education to environmental sustainability, housing, criminal justice, arts and culture, civil society. So really any issue area or cause that's critical to SIG members, we have an organization that's responding directly to those needs. We've got a very well-defined vetting process where we look at it, the way the organization is structured, their finances, the impact of their program, and then we look for nonprofit programs specifically that are both high impact in the community, but importantly, are relevant to companies and can help drive business KPIs in addition to having a positive impact on people's lives. Never more than right now are these organizations working tirelessly to respond to the needs of communities. And so I'd love to be able to feature a few of our organizations today that are really at the front lines, both in local communities, regionally, and then globally, responding to the needs of individuals and communities and in response to COVID. What I'd like to do is invite Kyle Zimmer. Maybe we can start with you, Kyle. Tell us a little bit about First Book and the powerful work that you do, and then give us a sense of how the current health crisis is impacting the life of the beneficiaries you serve, and how have you adjusted your operations to respond to the current environment.
And Kyle, you might be on mute. Hi, Kyle. Yep, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Are we all right? Okay, I'm happy to jump in and explain First Book's mission and operations. I do want to just say thank you for the opportunity to elevate the social sector, to elevate the discussion of how the social sector interacts with the private sector. You guys are really pulling all of our vision up to the horizon where it needs to be. It's a really critical conversation, so thanks for bringing us all together. First Book is a nonprofit social enterprise. We are 29 years old, and our focus is access to high-quality education for the more than 28 million kids growing up in low-income families here in the U.S. And also in Canada. We have an office in Washington, D.C., and we also have one outside of Toronto. We have been focused on the issue of education because we are committed to the fact that education is the best path out of poverty. And, you know, the COVID crisis that we are all facing, you know, like so many crises that have hit the country over decades, it really amplifies the inequities that were already there and were already undercutting, you know, millions of families and millions of kids. And I'll just spend a moment talking about our basic models, but I also, as you suggested, I want to take a minute and talk about what we're doing in this current climate. So First Book, you know, what we've done is we've really tried to identify what are the major barriers to quality education for kids in need. And then we build social enterprise models that are almost infinitely scalable in order to address those major barriers. I'll give you some of the highlights of our major programs, but we're always innovating, we're always moving to try to identify the most agile models. So it does change all the time, and we always have ideas in the pipeline that we're piloting. The first issue that we were focused on as an organization is the fact that for these 28 million kids, there are lots of adults, never enough, but lots of adults in their lives. There are educators in preschool and after schools and church basements and a huge array of community institutions and local heroes that are trying to reach those kids. But what we recognized as a significant barrier to their educational opportunities was the lack of aggregation of those institutions, the lack of a shared platform where they could begin talking to each other and really moving with more uniformity to leverage the work that was going on across the community. So to respond to that, First Book built something called the First Book Network. It is an online community made up of formal and informal educators that are working with kids in need from ages 0 to 18. They are at schools and also in the widest variety of settings: preschools, after schools, healthcare clinics, church basements, food banks. Like, if you can imagine it, they are part of our network. The network currently, the number of members currently is just over 475,000. And even during this COVID crisis, about 1,000 educators are still joining our network every single week. The second barrier that we really have tried to focus on is the lack of physical resources. And the physical resources include books and e-books and lots of other things, including e-games, including backpacks, including hygiene kits for homeless kids, a huge variety of physical needs that really are amazingly absent from Title I schools as well as after-school and preschool programs. And, you know, these are often resources that the rest of us, luckily, can take for granted for our own kids. And so what we've done with the marketplace, which is the social enterprise that we've developed to address this barrier of the lack of physical resources, it's an e-commerce site. And what it enables our members to do is to collectively come together, buy through the marketplace, and that allows us to use this is a very large market to really push the lowest possible price, and we always push for free inventory as well. We recruit funds from foundations, from individual donors, and a lot from corporate partners to support access to these resources. To give you a sense, First Book has distributed over 200 million books now, and educational resources in excess of $1.8 billion. We run in an average year, just to use the book metric, we run between 17 and 18 million books in addition to the other resources we provide. What that allows us to do is also to push for content that is more relevant to our audiences and to really use that market strength for positive action. A final headline for us is the lack of access to data. That we recognize that also is a significant barrier to equal education. And data is king right now in almost every sector that you look at. And what we recognized was that in the sector of people who are working on poverty, there really is no consistent and high quality data. So we built a research arm called First Book Research and Insights. It gathers data from the educators on the front lines through the First Book Network. We have been building it over the last 4 or 5 years, and increasingly it's providing value, not just to First Book for our insights, but also across the broader field. On the question of how has our life changed during this pandemic, I think that every time there's a disruption, when there's a recession, when there's anything going on that is even a head cold for the rest of the population, it turns into pneumonia fast for the kids and families we are focused on. It's very hard to understate how massive the implications are going to be for the more than 55 million students across the United States that are now out of school, and even more so for those that are out of school and with families that are in poverty, because again, children in affluent schools and from more affluent families, they can continue their schoolwork through online curriculum. They have books in their homes, but in countless schools across the country, which, by the way, constitute nearly half or more of the students attending public schools in the United States, are from low-income families, 51% from low-income families. And because of the coronavirus, what we see is a dramatic explosion of need because it basically cut the foundational underpinnings out from an educational perspective, out from under all of those families. We are hearing, from a large number of our members to, really desperate for continued resources. And so what First Book has done is, really focusing on that culture that we've built of innovation and agility. What we've done is we've designed several new initiatives that expand what we're able to offer in a very simplified form. So let me give you one example. We sounded the alarm with our publishing partners, and we said, books in the home are going to be critical during this period. And our publishing partners have responded like real heroes. We currently have almost 8 million books in our warehouses, and we are racing to raise the funds for shipping and handling to get those books out to the literally hundreds of thousands of educators who are so desperate for them so that they can get them to the kids in their schools and communities. So that is one thing that we've done. We've raised this pool of beautiful new books that are currently available, and we're racing to get them out the door. The second thing we've redesigned is that of our delivery mechanisms. Traditionally we went through schools, after-school programs, preschool programs, and those, of course, are all closed down. So we've actually been able to pivot and use, we have large-scale distributions going through homeless shelters. We're working with school districts across the country as they set up feeding sites and meal delivery programs to include books and resources in those programs so they can combine food and books in the hand. It's pushed us to be even more innovative. But the good news about that, and I think this is true across a lot of nonprofits and for-profits, is this kind of crisis, of course it's going to have its challenges, some of which are going to be overwhelming at times. But what it also does is it forces us through the discipline of looking at our business models, at imagining new ways of doing business. Some of those new ways are going to dramatically add to the power of what we're able to do when this crisis is behind us. So, it is with, a dose of realism that we are attacking these new and heightened needs that we're seeing, but it's also recognizing that we're going to beat this thing, and we're going to be smarter and more efficient when we come out on the other side.
Kyle, thank you so much for all of that context on the work that you're doing. And I think it's this notion of innovation and thinking about how we move our models forward is a great segue to our next nonprofit that we want to talk to, which is the UN Foundation. So I want to take us from sort of a North American response on around a very critical issue, which is education, and invite Martha Rebor from the United Nations Foundation to talk to us a little bit about the work you're doing in collaboration with the World Health Health Organization on a global response, both in terms of research, preparedness, response. Can you tell us a little bit more about this COVID response that the UN Foundation and the World Health Organization are pursuing? Martha?
Someone can unmute me. Okay, great. Sorry, Teresa, I think I was stuck on mute. Great, thank you so much. Well, again, thank you so much to Dawn and Teresa for this opportunity to talk about what the UN Foundation is doing and just being part of such a great group of nonprofits doing important work locally and globally. So let me just start quickly to explain what the UN Foundation is. The UN Foundation is a 501c3, so we are a nonprofit organization. We are able to use the United Nations name in our name. That's through careful negotiation and a special relationship we have with the UN. We were founded, some people may remember, 21 years ago when Ted Turner made that historic $1 billion pledge to the UN. And UN Foundation really is set up under 3 pillars. So the 3 main pillars are global health, women and girls, and energy and climate. And we are here to sort of connect resources and ideas from the U.S., the private sector, the public sector with the UN. And right now I can tell you with COVID, so I work in the global health pillar of the UN Foundation, and a lot of our work is supporting the work of WHO and UNICEF. And we do this through advocacy, we do it through resource mobilization. But an interesting and really wonderful thing about working at a place like UN Foundation is when something like COVID happens, and we saw this on a smaller scale for Ebola, but when there is a health emergency, it's amazing the way the employees of the UN Foundation and all our wonderful partners such as Givewith, but many other corporate, private sector, foundation partners we have all come together, and we're able to sort of mobilize people to come together and work towards protecting the most vulnerable. So what WHO is doing, and if some of you have had the chance to listen to Dr. Tedros and Mike Ryan and the group there, they are really working so hard to be a clear, authoritative, evidence-based, source of information. They have been providing technical guidance, they've been coordinating, and I think a lot of what UN Foundation has been able to do specifically for COVID is we set up a COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. And we set this up with the Swiss Philanthropy Foundation. And the reason we did this is so that it is truly global in nature. And what we did is we reached out to, this is a fund that private sector individuals and foundations can contribute to. It's global in nature, and the idea is that how can we best support all the critical work that WHO is doing. So WHO came out with a strategic plan back in February, and this is when the virus was mostly in China and had started moving into Thailand, and we knew that this was going to be moving and affecting a lot of very vulnerable people around the world. And the Solidarity Response Fund is to really help countries prevent, detect, and respond to the pandemic. So the money raised, 90% of it goes to country-level efforts, so it's helping vulnerable and at-risk countries. It's building up lab capacity and providing critical supplies, we know, such as protective equipment for those on the front line, the healthcare workers. It's protecting vulnerable patients. It's treating the most vulnerable. It's helping set up intensive care units. You imagine some of these countries where they don't have the resources to do that. Improving community engagement. So just making sure, again, that it's clear, evidence-based guidelines, and then just transparent communication so that all communities have access to the best information to be able to protect themselves. So this original strategic plan had a goal of $675 million, and that was from February through April. And there will be a new goal and a new fund, which a new version of this fund that will be coming out that UN Foundation will also. So we serve as the fiduciary for this fund. The WHO cannot take direct contributions from the private sector. So UN Foundation has been pooling these funds, and my colleagues have just been working overtime, making sure not only bringing the money in and meeting all the requirements of the different donors, but then also making sure that those funds are quickly channeled out to the WHO. As we know, time is of the essence, getting those funds out. So UN Foundation has been working, as I said, on this first fund that was February through April. We will have version 2 is under development right now with WHO, and that will take us through the end of 2020. So for the next 9 months, this is going to be in the billions, as you can imagine, for all that is necessary. But I think what I'd like to highlight especially is the incredible response that we have had. So through the UN Foundation's part of this, we have raised more than $100 million. And we have seen everything from the gaming industry that has come in a big way, celebrities, private sector. We've had individuals who've said, I lost my job, but here's $10. I believe so much in the mission of what WHO is doing. And it's just been really heartening to see that this has been, as Dr. Tedros keeps saying, solidarity is so important, and we are all in this together. So it's been really heartening on our side to see all these different players coming in and really, with this common goal of how can we protect the most vulnerable, but then as we know, WHO works in all countries. So we are protecting the most vulnerable across all countries, whether that's within the U.S. or within Europe, or as we start to see COVID heading to the southern hemisphere, where we know health systems require quite a bit of boostering and support. So I wanted to be clear, too, that this fund will go to, when we're talking about those countries, it goes through the WHO office within countries. So these are not grants that are being written to the country. It goes to the WHO office that is always working very closely with the ministries of health in these countries on what are the needs and what are the best ways to support. So they work, the work that I think what I want to highlight also is when you hear about country governments that need support, that is more a role of the World Bank and the IMF and some of the loans and structures that they're working on. But the WHO is working really more directly with ministries of health and the direct, in some cases it's, IFRC, right? It's working with refugees and NGOs on the ground. Whoever can best deliver the services within that country, that's who WHO will work with. So I want to leave time for my other nonprofit partners, and I'm happy to answer more questions. And I have an infographic about the where resources have already gone, all that's already been provided through this fund, and also how you can contribute to the fund, and how you can also, we've set up a whole way you can do employee giving to encourage your employees to give. But I'd like to give some time to my other nonprofit colleagues on the phone. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you,
and
Martha.
Teresa, if I could I just jump in for one quick second here? Folks, we are going to show you the mechanics in just a minute. I know a lot of you have asked, what are the mechanics of working with Givewith? We are going to go into that in just a minute, but I want to say, once again, it's not going to cost you anything to be able to contribute, and these are just 3 of the amazing organizations. So we'll get into the mechanics. The other question that's been coming in is, we are going to be downloading and pushing these slides to you at the end of the webinar. You may keep your questions coming in the lower right-hand corner of your screen in the Q&A, and we will attempt to get to all of your questions today. If not, you will have the contact information for everybody that was on today's webinar, so you can reach out afterwards. So, Teresa, I'm going to hand it back to you, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Leslie, because I know you've got a great story as well. So thank you.
That's okay. Important message for the participants on this webinar today. So Martha, thank you for helping to paint a more global picture. Now I want to invite everyone to sort of focus down a little bit. As many of us know, New York City is the epicenter here in the U.S., and so we've invited the United Way of New York City to speak to the incredible efforts that they're doing to support New Yorkers who are confronting the crisis. Leslie, please tell us a little bit more about what the United Way is doing and the collaborations that you're building across the city to respond to the crisis.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you. I think we've had lots of thank yous go forth, and I, too, really appreciate the opportunity really to share more about what United Way of New York City is doing in this crisis. I think, as you said, New York City is the epicenter of this pandemic in the U.S. I mean, we have not seen a pandemic like this in over a century, certainly in this country. And so this city is right now facing mass uncertainty due to the COVID-19 crisis. And there's a number of things that we need to do in order to address that. For more than 80 years, United Way of New York City has really been committed to serving this community. And we are very particularly focused on low-income New Yorkers and addressing their particular needs so that we can really highlight the triumphs and challenges that they are going through as we really try to mobilize that power across the city to really get some help where help is needed. There's a couple things we know here, right? We know that there are going to be serious, not only short-term, but also long-term impacts to the city because of this pandemic. We know that here in New York, 2 of 5 of the 2.5 million New Yorkers already lack the sufficient savings, the sufficient income to withstand like a current loss in wages that so many hourly workers are going through right here in New York right now. We've got public schools closed. We've got workplaces shuttering. And as this pandemic unfolds, these low-income workers that are really working paycheck to paycheck are really going to experience what I think is going to be unprecedented. I mean, not just me, but obviously we all know it will be unprecedented financial hardship. And there's really no clear option for how they are going to recoup those wages. Our expectation in New York is that 2.5 million number will really start to surge in the coming weeks. We also know that right now 700,000 New York City school children, especially those who rely on school-based feeding programs for breakfast and lunch. When we're talking about low-income communities in New York City, these are communities where there is food scarcity. We know that often students in those communities rely on breakfast and lunch as their main meals of the day during the school day. And with school closed, this demand for emergency food in those low-income communities is also going to exponentially increase. We also know that with schools closed, that some of the workers that are on the front line, those essential workers that are still being asked to go into work, do not have the child care that they are used to, and that without that in place, that their own employment is even at risk. As we think about the health care, the grocery stores, those frontline organizations that are still asking people to come into work. And so this COVID-19 situation has really created some really unprecedented challenges in New York City. But here at United Way of New York City, what we're trying to really focus on and what we are using a bit as our mantra internally is that while fear moves fast, help moves faster. And with those challenges in mind, we set up our COVID-19 Community Fund, and that is really meant to support and mobilize the network of over 600 community-based partners that United Way of New York City works with across the entire city. These are frontline organizations that are able to help families weather this crisis. And our network of community partners really are going to be able to help with emergency food, with eviction prevention, with benefits access, with education programs, remote learning. We have programs here we call our sort of 5 key programs: Read NYC, Feed NYC, Benefits Access NYC, Strengthen NYC, and Advocate NYC. And this COVID-19 Community Fund will be doing a great deal of helping to support those key areas. One example of this, for example, is our emergency food initiative, Feed NYC. This onslaught of the COVID-19 challenge has really impacted the emergency food provider system, food pantries and soup kitchens across New York City. We manage a citywide network of over 400 emergency food providers that distribute over 10 million pounds of food a year. That network has been severely challenged. We've got about 64% of our food pantries and kitchens and soup kitchens that have closed. Some communities obviously higher than others. In the Bronx, over 70% of the food pantries and soup kitchens is closed. The Bronx here in New York is also a financially challenged community where there are enormous pockets of low-income people. So not being able to have access to food for families and children is certainly a major, major issue. And we know that unemployment claims are rising as this pandemic continues. New York City is one of the hospitality centers of the world. And so the restaurant, hospitality sector alone that has about 321,000 jobs are most at risk in a city like New York, where basically everyone has not been told to shelter in place, but for the most part, we're talking about stay home, stay safe. And so our community fund this week will start resourcing some of those emergency food partners to provide supplies, the safety equipment that they need, to actually help and send additional food supplies to those pantries and soup kitchens that are open. And these soup kitchens rely primarily on volunteer staffing. We have an enormous network of corporate partners that are always sending volunteers to really help supplement their needs. Obviously, volunteerism is at a halt right now. So they need the additional staff, even those that do remain open, that are seeing much increased traffic. They need the staff that they require in order to keep themselves open during these challenging times. We also are looking to resource with our fund the Plentiful app. This is a groundbreaking digital technology that connects our network of food pantry and soup kitchens directly to clients. Because of this platform, we've been able to message clients, let them know where their pantries are actually closed, let them know which are open, and how they can make sure they can access emergency food. It really helps to connect food insecure New Yorkers immediately with those who can help. And lastly, we know, and probably most importantly, we know that our teachers and children here in New York are needing critical support as well. The New York City Department of Education certainly needs help with their remote learning program. We're so pleased, for example, to be partnered with First Book as the books at home for students in the New York City DOE are going to become even more critical now than ever. And so for that remote teaching, we need tech. There are students in low-income communities that don't have the laptops that they need in order to actually access a remote learning platform. And so between the digital learning, trying to make sure that we've got books, laptops, and tablets for those students, those are all of the things that we are hoping to fund through our COVID-19 Community Fund. And, we not only need resources for that fund. So far, we've raised $1.5 million, and I personally think we have a long way to go in order to really fund all of the efforts that we know are critical in this city. But we also need advocates. We need volunteers. Virtual volunteerism is on the rise, and we've got some extraordinary opportunities at United Way on how people who want to volunteer during this challenging time can still do so. And so, we are really looking to spread the awareness of the challenges, very particularly to New York, as you said, as the sort of center of the pandemic. And I know that we are going through a very tough time here, but at the same time, New York has weathered 9/11. New York has weathered Hurricane Sandy. United Way of New York City was at the forefront of helping during those crises. I know that we will be at the forefront during this crisis, and I expect that as a lifelong New Yorker, I expect that we will get through this yet again.
Leslie, thank you for A, inspiring us, and B, for all the work that you're doing to respond to the needs here in New York. And as I think all of our nonprofits have expressed, the needs are significant. And that was one of the reasons that Givewith, in partnership with SIG and with BCG, created our COVID-19 response initiative. It's a way for companies that use the Givewith platform and integrate Givewith into their transactions to do something immediate right now to provide funding to organizations like United Way, the UN Foundation, First Book, and many others who are out the front lines. I know that there's a lot of interest in what can we do, right? Members are on the call saying, how can we help? Roger, would you speak a little bit to what BCG is doing in support of the COVID-19 initiative launched by SIG and Givewith and BCG, and how you're applying that to your work today?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we're working rapidly to support this initiative in any form it takes. So we have consultants standing by to help as this evolves and creates new challenges. But we are also activating this across our technology alliance network. So folks, a number of technology vendors to help scale this out. We're activating this across our clients where possible. So we're trying to get this out. We're trying to use the power of kind of BCG globally to bring this to as many organizations as we can, so they're aware of this and leverage it in their procurement as well. And then on the technology alliance side, helping them better integrate with the procurement systems or sales systems that will allow this impact to be scalable as we take it from a kind of a one-by-one effort to a scaled effort supported by technology.
Terrific. Dawn, can you talk a little bit about why SIG joined this initiative and the power that you see for SIG members in getting involved with Givewith and the initiative and funding nonprofits through this unique funding model?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And I just have to tell everybody on this call today and folks that listen to this webinar at a later date, the social giving impact is just so important, and I hold it so near and dear inside of me as just something that we need to do as just human beings on this earth, is to support one another and to give back. And so this initiative is huge. Not only can you create significant new business value for your own company by leveraging your sourcing and procurement, you're also providing funding to communities. And I mean, I teared up when, it's New York is going to stay strong. It's going to come out of this. But we want all the communities to come out of it. And, I'm sitting here in Florida, another hopefully not, but another epicenter. But we all have to do our part. And this is a way that we can all give back. So, Teresa, people are dying to know. I really want to get into how can a SIG member company start right now and get involved?
Sure. Thank you, Dawn. So it's fairly straightforward. It's pretty easy, and we want to make this as frictionless as possible for your members. First things first, please reach out to Givewith at givewith.com to get involved with the initiative. There's also an app extension on SAP Ariba where you can integrate Givewith directly into your proposals. So first step, take action by joining Givewith or finding us at Ariba. You can then sign on and integrate this opportunity directly into your proposals and into your B2B transactions. As Dawn has said, we have made a commitment on the part of Givewith to waive our subscription fees and to waive our transaction fees so that 100% of the funding generated through the use of Givewith to support the COVID initiative is going directly to the nonprofit organizations that are in our network and working on the front lines. Once you integrate a impact opportunity into your deal and your buyer and supplier agree, the funding, typically 2% of the deal, will flow through the Givewith platform to our nonprofits through our COVID response initiative. Those organizations will put that money to work responding to needs in their communities. And then we at Givewith gather impact data as well as provide to both the buyer and supplier participating companies beautiful high quality content, reporting tools videos, photography, press releases, and other kinds of communication tools that companies can then use to report back to ESG reporting agencies, to your shareholders, to your employees about the action you've taken simply by doing what you do every day, buy and sell, but adding this unique feature to that not only allowed you to accomplish that buy-sell transaction, but enabled you to have a direct positive impact on people and communities in need. And then using those tools, communicate with your audiences on the impact that's happening. Givewith will be collecting impact data from our nonprofits and will be providing lots of reporting tools back to companies so that you have a good sense of how the dollars were put to work in communities. So it's as simple as that, Dawn.
Yeah, but the number 5 on the screen, folks, what you need to do is go to the Givewith site, because the content that they give you to help amplify what it is you're doing and the way they tell the story, not only is it extremely high quality, I mean, this is movie-ready quality, but they help you craft the message as well. So you've got to get on to the website and see some of the assets. I was blown away with their ability to help you amplify your dollars. And so when we talk about this right now, Teresa, there is a point where a transaction is going to give dollars back to a nonprofit, and it's not going to cost a buy-side organization anything to participate, and yet the buy-side and the sell-side both get to take credit for this contribution that they're creating through their partnership. So folks, get on the givewith.com and find out more about what we can do with our purchasing power and how we can impact all of the different organizations. So, you know, super trying times for the world, for our businesses, for a lot of people personally. And then, you know, Givewith heard the needs of all of these nonprofits, and they decided to forego their fees. And I want to tell you that, you know, Roger from BCG, you know, they're giving of their time and their energy to this project as well. So a lot of really bright minds are there to help us drive societal value and business value. So they have organized for all of the fees using this tool to be waived for all SIG member organizations, for the customers and the members of all of our organizations. So folks, this is extremely important that you pay attention to it. So typical transaction fees for the next 6 months with a full 100% of every transaction, 100% is going to go back to these nonprofits, and not just the 3 named. While those 3 are fantastic, they can go right into your local community if you have a nonprofit that you'd like to impact. And then BCG is supporting this effort with no associated fees. That's right. A world-class consulting firm is also waiving their fees to help you get up and running, and that is huge. So I just want to thank Roger and the entire BCG group for that. But then if you have any colleagues or friends that weren't able to join us, we are going to send a link to today's webinar out to you tomorrow. And I beg you, please pass this on, pass it up your organization, across your organization to get buy-in, and then send it to your friends and other colleagues in the procurement world. We're going to be pushing this out through social media every which way we can. And the contact information for every single person that was on today is here. And I had permission from each of them to say, share the contact information, reach out to them. They want to carry the conversation going. They want to keep it going. You know, we had over 300 people sign up with a 3-day notice for this webinar. So I know it means a lot to all of you. So when you get the link to the webinar tomorrow, please keep sharing it and sharing it. We're not going to keep this private behind a firewall. This needs to be out there first and foremost for everybody. So Teresa, as a co-moderator, but more importantly, you're just a beautiful person inside and out, and your heart really shines through. So thank you so much to Teresa and Givewith for bringing this webinar to us today. And Teresa, along with me, I'd just love to thank all of your panelists that you were able to grab at the last minute and say, hey, and they all showed up for such a great cause. So Teresa, thank you, and thank Givewith, and I'm going to hand it over to you to thank everybody else.
Sure. Well, Dawn, SIG has been such an incredible partner. We came to you with an idea and you said, let's do this. It's important for our SIG members to know the work that's happening and how they can help. So thank you for your leadership. Of course, Kyle, Martha, Leslie, the work that you're doing is so critical, and our hope and expectation is that after today, we will inspire more companies to be involved in collaboration with SIG and BCG and Givewith to drive more dollars your way. And of course, Roger, thank you for your collaboration with us and your partnership and helping to make this model really come to life. It's really been a privilege for us to share this information, and we remain ready to work with every organization who wants to incorporate Givewith into their transactions to support these powerful organizations responding to COVID and to just broad social issues that we have to address. So thank you all.
Thank you. And folks, the gray screen in the center says file transfer. If you click on that, you can directly download the slides to your desktop, but we will also send you a link to the presentation tomorrow. So with that, I just want to ask everybody to please stay safe, wash your hands, keep your social distancing, please stay healthy, and prayers are out there for your family and your organizations to come through this as strong as possible. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.